And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Connected for Real podcast. I'm Rebbetzin Bat-Chen Grossman, and today with me is Molly, Coach Molly List. And I am so excited. First of all, because Molly and I were in Pratt together. So if you guys know my story, I am a graphic designer by trade, and I've been a graphic designer for 15 years before I pivoted to become a coach. And Molly started in the same place as me with an amazing degree in Pratt Institute. And we kept in touch ever since. So this is actually a really fun conversation because this is a person that I look up to, that I enjoy talking to, that I know for many years. And I'm going to stop talking now and give it over to you. Molly, introduce yourself, and then we'll get into expansion and you.
So I am Molly Mayer. Like Bat-Chen, I did the same thing. I was a graphic designer for many years before I pivoted to become a coach, mainly for parents on time management and productivity, helping them to get more done each day so they have time to spend with each other, their families, and to nurture their relationships.
That's amazing. We all want more time. So let's talk about expanding time. And, that comes with collapsing time. A lot of people say, get a coach and it will collapse the time it will take to reach your goals or things like that. So here we're talking about the opposite, how to actually expand the time that you have to hold all the parts of, the things that you want to do. So let's get into that.
So every person gets 168 hours a week. It doesn't matter where you live, how much money you make or not make, what kind of job you have or not have, how many kids, none of that. And so then it becomes crucial to look at how you're spending your time. And time expansion actually goes hand in hand with time collapsing. Because if it takes you a shorter amount of time to reach your goals, then you have all this extra time. And that's where the time expansion comes in. So if you are more efficient with your time, which is what I tell my clients, then you get more done, then you actually have more free time. And that's the expansion piece.
That's amazing. Let's talk about how to do that. But first, I want to talk about what is just conceptually time and our ability to manage ourselves within time and all of that, like bigger picture. Because I think that, people are always running to fix it. And if we could just pull back a second and be like, get into that.
So time is often referred to as a commodity, and it's not, because you can't make it, buy it, sell it, get it on the black market, cook it in your oven. It doesn't exist. So once time is gone, it's gone.
Right.
And so for me, in most of my life personally, it became about how to be more efficient with the time you have.
Right.
And it's not just efficiency in the sense of using the time wisely, but it's what you're doing within using the time wisely. Now that we have screens and we're pulled in 18 different directions, it can be very difficult to get stuff done. So I also talk to my clients about focusing. What are you doing for the next hour? Are you working on the marketing report? Are you meal planning? But are you also checking email, answering the phone? All of that, which takes away from the work you're going to get done. And so it takes longer. So
Right.
I talk my clients out of multitasking because I don't believe in it. And I talk them into the idea of saying, for the next hour, I'm going to focus on doing one thing and one thing only. And I'm not going to answer email. I'm not going to answer my phone. I'm not going to scroll social media at any point. I'm just going to do that one thing. And what my clients have found is that doing that, they actually get more done. And it takes them shorter amount of time to finish the project, whatever it is.
Right.
Therefore, they have more free time. And it's what they do with that free time that is important, because they can use that to nurture the relationship with their partner, nurture the relationship with their kids, nurture other relationships, pick up an old hobby they let go of, maybe read more, get outside more, or, at the very least, take care of themselves, which I have found parents don't do as much as they should. They put themselves last on that to-do list. And I was guilty of it myself as a parent. So
Yeah.
I fully understand. So
Yeah, I actually, in the way that you said it now, I also was sort of picking up on in your free time, in the leftover time, that's when you can use it for family. And I'm thinking, what if it was the opposite? What if you plugged in the family time and, the important things that were important to you first?
absolutely.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest game changers for me.
Right. When I help clients develop a weekly schedule, one of the things I talk to them about is the importance of time with their partner, time with their family. I mean, research has shown that kids who sit down to a family dinner at least 4 times or more a week are less likely as they get older to abuse drugs and alcohol and get in trouble with the law, because they feel a connection to a larger community. They feel a responsibility to a larger community. And I reiterate that to my clients all the time because I want them to understand the importance of sitting down with your kids. I raised my daughter in a home where the dinner table was device free. There was no cell phone at the table. And
Right.
on the rare occasion we needed to look something up, I grabbed my phone and I looked it up. But for the most part, we talked. And that's important. That connection is really important. It's important with your partner, it's important with your friends.
You're reminding me, my parents had this like great rule that I wish we still had because it was so old fashioned. But those old phones that were connected to the wall, if we were at any meal and we were all sitting around the table eating, nobody got up to get the phone. The phone kept ringing. And it was in the days where you had no idea who's calling. This could be the phone call of the year that was change your life, and that thing that you need to know. And it was just like, nope, nobody's picking up the phone. We couldn't care less who's calling because right now this is more important. And it taught me something extremely powerful. And I wish that we still had that. It was interesting because then I went to someone else's house, and her father had it was at the time already, they had like the phones without the wires. So it was wireless. And the father was able to take it with him everywhere he went, and the wireless phone was right there on the table in case somebody calls. And it was shocking to me because for all these years, I thought this is how you have a meal. You do not pick up, you do not care who is on the phone. We don't even want to check. Nothing. And it is like shocked me. I remember feeling that. And I was already like 21 when that happened. I remember like the actual take back of, ooh, wow,
When I
that
was
doesn't.
growing up, my parents tried to get my paternal grandmother to get call waiting. And her response was, if somebody's trying to reach me, they'll call back.
Right. It's such an old fashioned concept.
When I'm working on something and I'm focused on it, there's only two people I will answer my phone for, and they have to call once and then immediately call back for me to do it. And that's my daughter and my mother. That's it. Anybody else, when I'm done with the work, I'll call you. And it annoys people. I get that. My daughter, who's 20, will be like, why didn't you pick up my phone call? And I was like, because I was working. But what if it was an emergency? I said, you would have called right back. She's like,
Right.
true. I said, see?
Yeah.
So
We have a rule about that. My husband knows, I know, and he knows that if somebody calls twice, then it's an emergency. So I one time called and then hung up and then realized, no, I really need to call. And I called him, and he answered. And I was like, oh, I just wanted to tell you, blah, blah, blah. He's like, what's the emergency? Like, I don't know. What happened? Like, I'm wondering what you're talking about. "Hey, you called twice." I'm like, oh, I did? Oh, I'm sorry. That was totally a mistake. But it once you have these very clear rules, in your mind, then you can live by them, and it makes your life simpler, because then you don't have to wonder, and you don't have to worry, and you don't have to anything. It's just like, oh, he knows to call twice, and if he didn't, it just means that it can wait.
Exactly. And that's, I mean, I think that's where people make the mistake is we're in a culture where it's instant gratification. People expect an email response in 5 seconds. They expect you to return a phone call in 5 minutes. And it's like, no, I'm in the middle of something. You're going to have to wait because this is more important. And that's what I work with my clients is understanding that when you're developing a weekly schedule, not only are you putting the work on it, but you're also putting family time and couples time and time with your friends or time with yourself, because that's just as important as everything else.
I love that.
And you even put it on your calendar like it's an appointment. You're not going to schedule anything else for that time and you're going to honor it. And that's the most important thing.
And I think when we're talking about, we have a whole month on time, so I don't want to get like too sucked into that. But it's deeper than just time, right? It's the promises that you make to yourself that you're keeping, just like you would keep a promise to someone else.
Yeah. I mean, I
And
had a client very early on in my coaching who one of her concerns was she didn't feel she was having enough time with her children. And she ran two businesses. She had three kids, all boys, and I said to her, "Do you have 45 minutes a day for your kids?" And she was like, 45 minutes? And I was like, "Yeah, 45 minutes." And she's like, "I guess." And I said, "Okay. So every night before each kid goes to bed, because they went to bed at different times, spend 15 minutes with them." And the difference that made in her relationship when she after she started it was amazing, because each kid got 15 minutes with just mom to
right,
stories, to talk, whatever it was.
it's really powerful.
And when you
Now
put that
multiply this.
together, it makes total sense that your relationships get stronger.
Right. I'm just thinking, now multiply this by 8 and understand why I'm like exhausted. But like, yeah, I one of my biggest things is I try to spend time with the kids, and I found that in the season that I'm in right now, they're not necessarily all going to get one-on-one time every single day, but they're going to be able to have access to me for a bunch of different touch points throughout the day. So, in the morning, we have a long morning, till they finally go out. We wake up around here pretty early because my 3-year-old decided that he's jet lagged. Just kidding. But like, he wakes up at 5, and there's nothing you could do to change his schedule. So we're all up really early. Everybody's eating breakfast. They're all playing games. They're all running outside. They're going inside. Da, 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 right? And my baby. And there's a lot of different ages around here. So there's also a lot of different needs, and there's a lot of different things going on. So within the different touch points in the day, every kid has the ability to connect, which I really love. This is something that I did intentionally. And then once a month, I try to do one kid at a time. I'll take them out, or I'll do something fun.
Yeah,
Mommy and me time.
it's important because it helps you when you spend one-on-one time with each kid. It helps you to understand that kid.
Right.
And
And also, it takes them out.
one child, but I have an older sister, and having the ability to have concentrated time alone with each of my parents meant that my parents got to know the person I am versus the person my sister is, and that we are two different people and need different things, have different wants, and so the way they related to each of us was different
Right. And
because
also gives you the ability to see the person outside of their role as like oldest, youngest, middle, right? Like sometimes you're the victim all the time, but then when they see you just on your own, you have the ability to get out of that persona, because you're not being compared, you're not being in that, same environment. It's a really powerful thing.
Right. And that's another thing, when I talk to my clients about the free time they're finding is, the ideas of what they can do with it, whether it's more family time, one-on-one time with each child, couples time, whatever it is they want to do. And they're usually shocked when they find that if they focus their time, they have more free time. And they're like, oh, I can go get my nails done with my daughter. Oh, I can take my son to the park and get ice cream. Things like that.
Yes. And also, something I really like about you said you don't like multitasking, but this is different than multitasking is pairing. So, like you're saying, if the kids have to go to the park anyway, and you like to go outside or you like to go out for ice cream or whatever, like pair it, right? So, a lot of times I'll take one kid to visit my grandmother or to do something that I anyway want to do. And then it ends up being a double
Exactly.
whammy.
Exactly.
Very cool. So let's talk more about the productivity, staying focused, because I think a lot of people are trying so hard to get a lot done. And, I just want to like pause and say that the problem, or maybe the opportunity, or however you want to look at it, is that you look in the world and you see people who all have the same amount of time in the day, but they're reaching different things and creating different things and maybe measuring themselves against those same parameters. And so it's good and it's bad, but it just makes us realize that it really has to do with a lot of your own decisions.
Yes,
So
it does.
let's talk about that.
Well, when I work with a client, the first thing I have every client do prior to the first session is what's known as a time diary. And a time diary is that you write down your time and how it's spent by the hour or the half hour for 3 days. You must include a weekend day because we often spend weekends differently than we do weekdays. And it doesn't have to be consecutive. And they start to see where they're wasting time. Oh, I spent an hour scrolling social media. I binge watched 3 episodes of my favorite show. Things like that, where if they planned better and said, okay, I'm going to, watch the current episode of my show, stream it every Wednesday night after the kids go to sleep, then they're not spending time on the weekend binge watching, 3, 4 episodes, whatever it is. And so I get them to see that even if they take the things they like, that they wouldn't necessarily consider as, oh, I should put that on my schedule and put it on their schedule, they actually are more efficient, more focused, have more free time. And I think that's the key and important thing to understand is when we use our time efficiently, we find time, and that's time expansion.
Yeah. What's interesting? You're talking about writing your time diary, and I'm thinking they do the same thing with food, right? When you're unconscious of what you're bringing into your mouth and when you're eating, you're constantly chewing and you're doing things and you're multitasking. And like you said, you're not really focusing. You don't notice how much you eat. And then they tell you, write it all down. And you're like, in that moment already, just the awareness is enough because you're realizing, oh man, if I sit here and rot for the next 2 hours on my phone, I have to write that down. So let me like stop now and make a decision to do something that I am choosing. Like
Right.
just the awareness is enough.
In most cases, yes. In some cases, no, because it becomes a habit and you have to break the habit.
Right.
I had a client who was consistently running late for work. And when I talked to him about what he spent his morning doing, and he's like, well, I get up, I, take a shower, I go to get breakfast, I turn the news on, and I said, oh, there it is. And he's like, what? And I said, the problem is you're watching the news. and you're not going to get up from the news mid-story.
Right.
And they're going to put teases throughout the segments so that you want to stay later to listen to the segment that's coming up. So my suggestion
Yeah.
instead is don't watch the news, but maybe, go on a news site and see what the top stories are and pick one to watch while you're eating breakfast. And then when that story is over, you get out the door and you go to work. And that helped.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like this is like the first primitive, addiction thing where they were trying really hard to get you to stay and stay and stay on TV or on, whatever it was before your phone. Yeah, it's really powerful. I was also thinking that you were going to say that the news was an input first thing in the morning that was sort of messing with how he was, running his day. It was instead of him being in charge, it was sort of taking over. But that's just an interesting thing that came up for me while you were talking.
It did. But the other piece of it was a habit.
Mm,
Like his morning routine included watching the news. So by having him go on a news site, he can pick what he wants to listen to. So he has
right,
the choice to say, I want to listen to, the sports scores, which was something he really liked, or I want to listen to, a news piece on what's going on in my local community versus national or international news. And so his day was less affected because he was able to pick what he wanted
right.
to listen to.
Yeah.
And just as an aside, if you ever figure this out, the reason the weather and the sports is always at the end of the newscast is because that's what people want to hear. So they
Yeah.
make you watch the entire newscast just to get to that.
Yeah, it's like the
So
sales rack is in the back of
news
the
and go on the weather app on your phone or on your computer or go to weather.com or your local station site and look at the weather. You get all that information quickly without having to sit through 25-30 minutes of news that you may not be interested in.
right. Yeah. I was thinking of the sales rack in the back of the store. They know you want to see the sales, so they're going to put it all the way back so you have to go through all the things. It's the same idea of how are we allowing someone else to control our time. It's really
Yes.
interesting. Just the just the concept in general. Who is leading?
Right.
Wow.
It puts you in the driver's seat.
Right. I love that. So, there's a lot of coaches out there and we're all doing very amazing work. And the cool thing that I like to do is to really hone in on like, what is your niche within the niche, within the niche? Like at the end of the day, what is your superpower?
So my superpower, and I come to this as by experience because as I've said, I'm a mom myself, is I really like working with parents who have children ages 5 to 11. And the reason for that is kids at the younger ages can be very, very trying on a parent's patience and nerves and mental health. And by helping parents develop a weekly schedule and understand how to be more focused in their time and understand how to develop, good routines, good habits, and therefore have this free time that they found that they can spend with their kids, it gives them a more rewarding relationship with their child. And as the child grows, they continue to have that strong relationship. So
Yeah.
I would probably say my superpower is helping parents by managing their time understand that they're developing strong relationships with their kids, their partner, their family, their friends.
Yeah, I love that. I think that by the time they get to you, they've gone through the trying period of having kids under 5, which is, not easy.
No.
And now they're like almost sort of ready. But the other thing that happens when your kids pass the age of 5, which I wouldn't know because I just keep, staying in the stage of young kids because I have 8 kids and they're pretty much 2 or 3 years apart. So every 2 or 3 years, I go back in time to, oh, we're doing this again. But meanwhile, my older ones are getting older. And what I'm realizing is that the more independent they are, and 5 is really fun because they're able to take care of themselves and do things, and they're old enough but not old enough,
Right.
that creates time in itself. The fact that you don't have, little dependent people that are sucking your
Yes.
time. So, can we talk about that for a second? Because I think a lot of people are just sitting there going, the time isn't mine to begin with, and therefore I can't manage it because I'm not the one in charge.
Agreed. In that sense, when I talk about, working with parents with kids 5 to 11, it's because a lot of those parents don't realize, don't think about it, or don't embrace the fact that, yes, at 5 years old, your kid can do enough stuff for themselves that you can get back some time. And yes,
Right.
when they're younger than 5, they need a lot more help. You know, they can't get dressed, they, can't make their own food, things like that. But if you start at 5 with helping your child understand there's things they can start to do for themselves, then they feel a sense of accomplishment because they got themselves dressed, or they tied their shoes, and you have a little more time to yourself. So
Yeah.
it goes hand in hand in teaching your kids how to, quote unquote, be independent as they grow, and that gives you more time. Now there are some parents who will, you know smother their children, from day one until they're in their 20s, and, want to make them breakfast, and, want to do all these things. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but there's two ways to do it. You can do it that way where you just keep doing everything, or you can gradually, slowly hand things over to your children so that you get time back gradually, slowly as they get older.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm loving this. I'm thinking, just like that guy who was watching the news, he sat there and had to tell you step by step what he does. And to him, it wasn't obvious, right? And sometimes when a person says, my kids are sucking all of my time, I have no time to myself, I am, completely drained, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, when you have to actually say what you do, you don't realize how many pockets of time you had by yourself that you wasted because you just were so depleted that you're trying to grab at anything. And of course, the easiest stuff to grab is the junk food. The easiest stuff to grab is, the brainless, mindless waste of time. And I'm not telling anybody that like they're wrong in doing that. It's just the way the brain works, and that's okay. But when you get intentional and you actually look, you're like, oh, that's really cool. And this is what happened to me, with my journey of prayer. I was always being like, I can't, there's no time. I just can't find time to pray in the morning. I'm constantly running after my kids. My go to was like, there's a reason why women aren't obligated and time bound commandments because we have no time. But when I challenged myself, I realized that actually I can pray in the morning, and it allowed my kids to learn that they can also do things that are individual within the space and time, even though we're all in the same room. This was, by the way, really a great blessing in Corona time when we were all stuck in the house. Suddenly, it was their first time seeing that we adults have a life beyond just being their parents.
Hmm.
And before Corona, there was like a very clear segregation between, okay, now it's family time. I need to get you all out of the house, go to school, do the thing. And then I have my space and I work until you get home. And then again, I'm only with you and da 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 da. And then I put you to sleep and I go back to work and I do the work and then I go back, I go into my night routine and so on. So there was like so clear home, work, home, work, even though I was working from home. So to me, it didn't make a difference. It was just the difference was the kids. And suddenly we're all finding ourselves in the same place. We're all stuck at home. Everybody's here. And they're starting to realize that, oh, I have meetings. They have to be quiet outside the door. I disappear for an hour and then I come out and then now I'm with them, but then my next meeting is in 15 minutes. And between this and that, I also have to eat. So I'm running to the kitchen and they, wait a minute, they also want to eat. So it just became like this relearning of how to manage yourself within the family unit when there
Mhm.
isn't the separation.
Yeah, I mean, Corona was eye-opening for a lot of people in that sense. There was a lot of difficulty for parents in, working and helping their kids go to school and juggling all of that and realizing that they couldn't do both at the same time.
Right.
And, companies having to understand that, my employee has a 5-year-old child and that child needs to go to school. So from, 9 to 12, I don't have this employee working for me every day because they're helping their kid go to school. And I think that also forced people to think about how they spend their time because their time was drawn in so many directions that they needed to be clear. At this time, I'm doing X, at this time, I'm doing Y, at this time, I'm doing Z, so that, everybody in the family knew what the schedule was. Okay, mom's got school in the morning, dad's got school in the afternoon, you know. So dad works in the morning, mom works in the afternoon. We don't bother dad in the morning, we go to mom. We don't bother mom in the afternoon, we go to dad. Things like that became necessity
Right.
to make sure
Yeah,
everything could get done.
yeah, I think that, things just started sharpening up because we were forced to. Also a lot of marriages were rubbing against each other because they were suddenly in the same place and they suddenly had to communicate better and they suddenly had to be more clear about their values and about what matters and what doesn't matter and about their boundaries and about all sorts of things that it's okay in most cases to be fuzzy about things and just go through life. But then when you're pushed into a corner, you have to really start to get extremely clear. And I think
Yep.
this is one of those things that getting a coach and sitting down and looking at your time, looking at what you're doing, looking at your goals, looking at where you're going is very sharpening to who you are, what are your values, what matters to you, and then how are we going to do that uniquely to you. And that's what I really love to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a colleague in my last office job who said the only stupid question is the one you don't ask.
Oh,
And his point was, you need to ask. And, I tell that to clients all the time. You're not going to get what you want unless you ask for it.
yeah.
Your partner, your family is not, they're not mind readers.
Yeah.
So if you need something, you need to ask for it. In
There,
time, you need to be clear what you're asking of them or what you're asking for.
yeah. It reminds me of art school when we used to have brainstorming sessions and you had to come up with the most ridiculous things first and only kill it after because some of those crazy ideas were the things that were the most successful. And you would never
Exactly.
know until it comes out of your brain and somebody else hears it and says that was genius. And you're like, it was because it sounded extremely terrible in my head, you know?
Yeah, and not only that, some of the most successful things in the world, what came out in the end wasn't what they set out to do.
Right. Yeah.
It's like they started with one thing, ended up with another, and it became very successful. So, that's the point is unless you are clear on what you want and ask for it, you don't know if you're going to get it or not.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
So
that
let's talk about
simple.
that. Let's talk about that when it comes to expansion. We're all looking to expand. I talk about expanding your vessel and opening yourself up to receive more and also have the capacity to hold more. So I bring this analogy of the plate when people say, "Oh, I can't sign up now because I have too much on my plate." And I say, "What do you do when you have too much on your plate?" And they usually say, "You take something off." And I'm like, "No, you get a bigger plate." Right? You expand the capacity and now you can have all the things. So instead of saying, well, you know what, because I'm a parent now, I can't work anymore. I'm just going to kill work and focus on parenting. Or, by the way, that creates so much resentment. It's terrible. Don't do it unless this is what you really want, and then do it. And the opposite is like, oh, I have to choose between my marriage and my business. And it's just, impossible. It's like, you don't have to choose. The point is, you can expand. So let's talk about that a little bit more because we're getting
So,
somewhere really good.
right. So there is no such thing as work-life balance, and there is no such thing as work-life harmony. It is about more or less a yin and yang, which is there are going to be times when work demands more and you have to give more. And there are times when family demands more and you have to give more. And if you have the right, habits, routines, skills in place, then doing that can be easy. But part of what makes it easy is good communication.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need more time for work, making sure that your partner and your family, your kids, extended family, maybe babysitters, dog walkers, whatever it is, understand that. So they give you that leeway to do that so that when you come back from that period, you don't feel like you've missed out on anything. You don't feel like your family is, pissed at you or, aggrieved. It's more, we have this deal and I needed a period time more for work and my partner picked up the slack at the family and vice versa. When it's his turn or her turn, I'll do the same.
Right.
And that's the important thing.
Yeah. I had a client who would go into a different country to take care of her parent and then come back exhausted, and it would just create a whole slew of reactions from the drainage. Like I get there and I'm all on and have to do this and this, and then I take care of my father and I'm doing all the thing, and then I come back and I have to like crash and fill myself up, and then it starts all over again a couple of months later when it's my turn again to go take care of him. And I said, what if you had a system in place that supported you while you were at your father's, right? Like, what if your favorite foods were waiting for you? What if you had someone cooking meals for you when you're there? What if you had, a massage every week while you're in his country? And then when you come home, you have systems in place at home that would sort of allow you to crash in a way that is softer and smoother, and sort of like allow you to rejuvenate faster. So what do you need in place for this to happen? This was an amazing conversation because she suddenly realized that she's allowed to take care of herself while she's taking care of her father, and she doesn't have to be completely drained and broken by the time she gets back, which was a complete 180 from what she was living through.
Right. And the other thing with that is not just have processes and systems in place for her, but if she's leaving her family for a large period of time to take care of her father, have processes and systems in place in her family so that
Right.
they can continue to function at top form while she's gone, so that she's not coming home to, a broken down family,
Right.
because that's key too. She may be broken down, but coming home to a family that's broken down that she now has to build back up along with building herself up at the same time. That's
Right.
why she's crashing and burning
Right.
to a certain
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah. It's amazing that we all have our own experiences. And when we are in the experience, we don't see a way out because we're just so enveloped in our own issues. And only through helping other people and being helped by other people, because it's always a give and take, there's always that need for sharpening each other, right? only through that are you able to see, oh, it could be different. What if we could play with this a little bit? What if we can adjust it? And that's what I I've just been so fired up about is don't do this alone. Don't do anything alone. Like you don't life was not meant to figure it out on your own and pretend that everything's okay. It's actually meant to be in community. It's meant in, to be in that belonging.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, the amount of time it takes to double a recipe and cook double a recipe is not that much more than doing a single.
Right.
So why not make a second casserole? Why not roast two chickens and put one in the freezer for those days when you don't feel like cooking, or there's so much going on that you don't feel you have the time to put a hot meal on the table? So that instead of takeout, you're going to your freezer and saying, oh, I've got this lasagna. I've got,
Right.
this roast chicken that I can pair with a salad for my family and go that way. And
Yeah.
they all look at me and they're like, oh. And I said, not only that, if you put a note on the top of the item as to how to defrost it and how to reheat it, you don't even have to be home.
Right.
You could call home and have your teenager take the chicken out of the fridge and put it in the oven for your partner. It's that simple. And they're all like, oh, and I was like, yes, you know,
Right. You know what I think it's been really amazing for me was marrying my husband, and he's so systematic, and I had to learn from him all sorts of cool things about just letting things be easy because I didn't have that experience. So in my family, every meal is created by a creative artist who just looks at what there is and makes up a recipe. And it's very nice most of the time. And sometimes it comes out terrible. And that's fine because it's part of the creation process. But my husband's a scientist and he follows directions and he does things the same way every time. So his meals are always the same, pretty much. He's learned a little bit. I'm rubbing on him a little bit too much. Now he's just playing with the recipes. But for the most part, he's very much like, to the law. And he doesn't care that we're eating the same thing every single week as long as we have a system. So it is so much easier when you have a system in place. I did not even realize until I had to face it.
yep. Yeah, I mean, I meal plan and have for many, many years because it makes two things easier. It makes deciding what's for dinner way easier because it's already decided. And two, it makes grocery shopping easier
Right.
because you actually have a grocery list. This is what I need to buy for this week for meals. And there are basically about three ways you can meal plan. I mean, you can meal plan by the week, meaning, meatless Mondays, taco Tuesdays, wacky Wednesdays where people serve breakfast for dinner, which little kids seem to like.
Huh.
Or you can say, Mondays is chicken and Tuesdays is fish and Wednesdays is pasta and do it that way. Or I know people who pick recipes and, the month of March is 31 days and they will pick 31 recipes and just have them stacked out so they know this is what I'm cooking. Now, there may be a time when they're going out and they're not cooking and they can adjust as needed, but they literally just they know what they're cooking from day one of the month till the end of the month. And
Interesting.
so it
And
makes
then
it
they go,
easier.
do they always just follow that? Like the first of the month is always X and the second of the month is
No,
Y?
they can change it up as
Interesting.
the months go on. But,
That's cool.
yeah. And then there are like, for instance, if you're doing a meal plan that's like, Mondays is chicken, Tuesdays is fish, Wednesdays, you know, is pasta, you can also pick 4 to 6 recipes and say, these are the chicken recipes I'm going to choose from in the month.
Right.
And then
Right.
each week you pick which one you want. So there's lots of ways to do it and it just makes it so much easier. It's a little more difficult now that I'm an empty nester to meal plan just because it's just me. And it's, why do I want a meal plan for one person? But I do it. And I then always have leftovers, and leftovers can be another dinner, it can be lunch, whatever you choose. And so it's easy because then I don't have to think. I know what's for dinner.
This is so beautiful. You said something so important, and I want to slow down here. Just because I'm only cooking for myself, what's the point? You know? And that is something that we, very nice, good people who have been doing for everybody and everything all the time tend to fall into, which is like, oh, it's just for me, so who cares? And I was like, no, no, no. It matters. It matters more than you think. And I'm so proud of you that you still do it, even though you're like, whatever. But if you didn't do it, you would start to feel it so quickly, and you would be paying prices that you wouldn't even be aware of, because it's just all, starting to like go in all the directions.
Yep. When I was in my 20s, I lived in an apartment and the oven broke, and they came and fixed it, and then it broke again. And I called the management company, and they're like, okay, we'll get you, an appointment with the repair people. And I call back 10 days later, and I was like, okay, I'm still waiting for my appointment. And the woman literally was like, oh, she's probably a single woman living in New York. She's like, it's just an oven. And I looked at her and said, I cook dinner for myself almost every night. I use my oven, like turn it on to bake something at least 2 to 3 times a week. She's like, here's the number for the repair company. So, for me, cooking is a way of showing love to yourself.
Yes.
It's a way of, slowing down, sitting down, and taking note of who you are, and, getting in touch with yourself. And so I've always viewed it as that. And
It's so
so that's the
beautiful.
important thing.
You know what happened here? We're talking about expanding time, we're talking about expanding your capacity. And what ended up happening is that we're talking about slowing down. We're talking about not multitasking. We're talking about all the things that seem to be the opposite of what you would expect.
Exactly. And, you gain time when you meal plan because you don't have to think each day, what's for dinner? Do I need to stop at the grocery store and pick something up as part of dinner? It's done. And even if you do have to stop at the grocery store, you know that ahead of time.
Right.
And it's one less decision to make. And, when we have less decisions to make, we actually function better, because by the end of the day, you don't want to be making decisions. You're tired of making decisions. That's why they call it decision fatigue. So it's, and then you eat healthier. You're not going for the junk food. You're not going for the frozen dinners.
Right. It's just been so fun. It's so fun to go in all the different directions of expansion and how to create that time and space for the things that matter, because
Exactly.
we're realizing more and more that if you're not leading, then you're following. And
Exactly.
if they're feeding you what they want you to consume, then that's it. Like, you've given away your power. And with expansion, I think that's really the most important part. Is like, I have the calm method, which is the 4 steps to creating flow. And that's exactly what, when you create flow, you have more space, you have more abundance, you have the capacity to hold all the parts of you. It's just so fun. This is like what lights me up the most. Now I'm like awake again. And step 1 is connect to yourself, which you would think is such a not necessary step, because like, come on, we're gonna get things done, let's go, boom, boom, boom. It's like, no, actually, you gotta slow down, you gotta take a deep breath, you gotta check in, right? What do I want? What matters?
Exactly. And interestingly, I read several months ago an article, and in the article, the woman journalist said it's not empty nesting, it's open nesting, because it's an opportunity for you to sort of recreate who you are now that your kids or kid is, in my case, out of the house.
Right.
And I found that so interesting, because the idea of empty means they're all gone, it's empty.
Right.
Open means you're open to new possibilities,
I
to new
love
things.
that. Can we put that on like a big t-shirt? Oh, that's great.
I love it too because I was like, "Oh," and it's why, last fall I went on a big trip and my daughter's like, "You're going on a trip without me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." It's a trip I've wanted to do for a long time. I went to Sicily and I said, "I'm celebrating that you're out of the house and I have the space to myself." And she got so upset. And I was like, "But understand, it's not, I'm not doing it meanly. It's like, oh, I have an opportunity to sort of do things for myself and take care of myself and really focus on me when you're not here. And that's great. And that just means that when you are here, I'm more focused on spending the time with you because I've done the things I want to get done or need to do when you're not here."
Yes.
That kind
Yes,
of that kind of,
and
made her happy, but not quite.
I think it also models for her that she's allowed to take care of herself and do the things that make her happy, even when there's not other people doing it with her, even though it's not exactly how she thinks it should be or whatever. It's like,
Right.
no, you do you. It's so great that you're celebrating. I
Well,
celebrated this morning that my daughter went to first grade after an hour of, all of the trials and tribulations of trying to get her out of the house. I'm
well, and I
I'm
think
waiting for the
also
moment.
when you model for your children behaviors such as, taking care of yourself and taking care of your, partner relationship and, being there for your parents or, his
Right.
parents or other extended family members, then they see that and they want to do it. It's like, "Oh, well, mom does it or dad does it, then it must be something you should do."
Right.
Versus if you tell your kids, "This is what you need to do," they might be like, "Ugh, I don't want to do it." But if they see it, they're like, "Oh, I see how much joy, mom and dad get from spending time together. I want that when I grow up and get married."
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. This is so beautiful. It's really wrapping everything up for me in the most simple way, right? Because one time we went to a retreat and I took my aunt to be my cook. Right? I was like the one creating the retreat and I wanted there to be a person cooking live while we're having our sessions so that you could smell the food in the kitchen and feel really loved and taken care of and you could put in your 2 cents about what you like and don't like. There was a really great feeling and my aunt is awesome like that. So she also made it really great. And on the ride home, she says, "Do you realize that we are our entire, society will pay to get away and do nothing. Like go back to doing the things that we could do for free, but we just don't because, it's not worth my time to sit and just breathe or to sit and eat or to cook or whatever. But like it is. It is. Like we're talking about the counterintuitiveness of cook your own meals, plan ahead, really nurture yourself, and you'll see how much more time you have in your day. That makes no sense in paper, but then you actually put it on paper and you realize, yeah, because I'm not subconsciously trying to escape, trying to distract, trying to fill my holes by noise so I don't have quiet. I'm actually okay with the quiet. Well, this is a real shift.
Oh yeah, I think for a lot of people. And there's so much noise because between, with screens and, you know, your phone and email and videos and all that, there's just so much out there filling up your void that we often don't realize that it's not quiet. And then when we sit down and say, "Okay, we're just going to sit," it's like, "Wait, it's too quiet. Like, where's the background?"
Right?
And it's like, "No, that's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to sit down with a cup of tea and just chill or read a book, with
You
nothing
know
else
how
going on."
it's really beautiful outside today and it was cold for a couple of days. So the whole day today, and it's only 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but the entire day, every time I had some time, I went outside, I sat on the ground, I and I touched the ground. I just sat there and either I was eating something or I was just sitting, whatever, but I found myself grabbing these moments and really grounding myself. It has been such an amazing experience. Like, person sitting there thinking, oh, she probably does this all the time. No, I don't. That's why this is so exciting, because I know it in my head. But for me to actually give myself permission to pause everything and just go sit down outside for 5 minutes and then come back in and do more work is really powerful. And I'm hoping one day I listen to my own podcast and be like, oh, that's a good reminder. Let's go outside and play.
Exactly. We need to get outdoors. I mean, I live basically 5 minutes from Prospect Park, the biggest park in Brooklyn, and I walk in the park several times a week. And, I often forget I'm in the middle of New York City when I
Right.
do that because the park is so beautiful. I'm out in nature. And I'm like, oh, I'm in Brooklyn. I'm not, in the country somewhere. And it's needed.
Right.
You know, as I've said, parents put themselves last on their to-do list. And we need as parents to take care of ourselves because if something happens to us, we're of no use to our partners, to our kids, to our work, to anything if we're not in good shape, good form.
Right. Yes. Yes, this has been so fun. I love catching up
Yes.
with you. I love having you on my podcast. You guys should
Thank you.
know this is
Same
one of my
here.
longest friendships that I could think of that are really meaningful. So, thank you for coming on.
You're
How can
welcome.
people find you?
People can find me. My website name is lifemanagementpro.com, or they can just shoot me an email at Molly List, and that's MALI, Mayer, MAYER, at gmail.com. And just
Cool.
an interesting aside, I was named after my great grandmother, which is why it's spelled that way. So,
Mali is your great grandmother. That's so
yeah,
beautiful. I like that. Very cool. So, thank you for being here. Thank you to the listeners for coming. And if you want to go back and listen to the entire series on expansion, you can listen to Expansion in God, Expansion and Marriage, Expansion in Business, and then this one was Expansion in You. And I love that we were able to really wrap it up in this way, reminding ourselves to slow down, to think ahead, to really pause in order to create better time management later is a great reminder. So thank you. And don't forget to be connected for real.